I don't care how far back you go in the sales world, there have always been myths and legends and different gurus and different people that had, supposedly superhuman closing skills and tips and tricks they could impart to you to make you a better salesperson. There's just so many different, things to talk about there. I mean, from the beginning onward, from the original, Tin Men in the 50s going on to, the legendary salespeople of IBM and, just going through history, going through, the whole history of modern day sales. It has been something where there's, it's almost like it's filled with part BS, part mystique, part legend, part fact, part everything. It's just a kind of a muddied mess. And it seems like at whatever point in time you want to discuss sales, you're discussing a lot of stuff that's hokum and BS and a lot of stuff that's reality and truth. And the two just blend seamlessly together and even fuse in different training courses and all kinds of stuff where half of what people are being taught is, it's superfluous bullshit. It's stuff that just fills airspace, right? It's not something that has any kind of validity to it in a factual sense. It may be valid, it may not, but, it is what it is. So I wanted to talk in this video about closing techniques because lots of people that I encountered through the years have put all their stock into it, one or more closing techniques. They've latched on to, this one of 1,000 different techniques and said, this is the one that's going to make me money. And I think the problem is not the closing technique. The problem is the mentality behind the person using it. Closing techniques blend together seamlessly. In the real world where closing techniques get used, if you've ever been mentored by a really good closer, a really good salesperson, half of those people don't use anything that a sales trainer would teach them, right? They're not sitting there regurgitating any kind of, stuff that you can pull out of a training manual and do yourself. This is not paint by numbers. This is not something that is taught in terms of this is how it's done and do it this way and you'll be successful. That's not it at all. Really successful, really good closers, really good salespeople are people who are very instinctual if you meet them. They've trained themselves in the analog reality of going out there and actually conducting lots of demonstrations, talking to, countless people. And yes, they use some closing techniques. Everyone has to use some. But if you were to sit there and you were to give somebody no training, let's imagine you took a person and you trained them, you raised them on a desert island, right? You told them there's this thing called sales. Convince me to buy your coconut, right? Or convince me to buy your pet rock or your soccer ball with a face painted on it, or lots of different things. The point being, if you ask them to do it, invariably, if they spoke English, or they spoke any language for that matter, they would use some technique to try to get you to buy. It could be as crude as buy the damn thing and come at you with a rock. But the point is they would use a technique. And then people would point at them and say, see, that's the technique. That's the magic secret. That's what works. But it's not, because they're just pulling at what comes naturally to them. They're just coming up with whatever technique they feel like at that time. And that's what most of your really good salespeople do. Because if you were to break down sales the way I have and go through different, been on tons of demos, you pull at all different techniques. You blend them together. You break them apart. You half use them. You fully use them. What you're doing in the struggle with the client, with the prospect, to try to make the sale is you're basically grabbing at whatever works and pushing and pulling in that direction. And it's such a nuanced sort of social struggle that there are no, hard and fast rules. But when you go back to the bench, you come back to your computer, you go back to the drawing board and you try to break down what's going on, you come up with something very academic that looks like, oh, well, this person succeeded because of X, Y, Z, Z, Y, X. And no. That's a breakdown after the fact. That's Monday morning quarterbacking the sale. You really want to see why that person was successful. You have to look at what they did in the moment and at the time, and don't think that they had some magical Pandora's box filled with sales techniques that they just burst open and used. Not at all. They used their instincts and their gut and all the various aspects of their personality to persuade another person to buy something. And I wanted to do this just to open your eyes to that fact, because lots of people are looking for a paint-by-numbers solution. They're looking for, the guru that's going to teach them something and make them into a great closer, or they're looking for the book they're going to read, or the technique they're going to observe. They're looking for all these kind of things. And the fact is, it just doesn't work in the real world. In the real world, you have to pull up, you have to look to yourself. You absorb as much as you can, all the tools you possibly can. And that's why I teach those tools. That's why I go into and educate upon things like the assumptive close and, the value-added customer close and, and yes, close and triples and all the different closing techniques, not in the hopes that you're going to use them all like, magic bullets lined up in your proverbial sales gun. I'm looking at it like you're going to, take those techniques, absorb them, and some of them you'll use, some you won't. You're going to experiment, you're going to dabble, but it's more about growing your own personality and growing your experience in a direction so that you have that sense that you can take on anything. And that's a big part of it, is your attitude. If you go into the sales arena with an attitude that this is some kind of a nerve-wracking struggle to recall and regurgitate data that you've been fed before, you're going to fail bad. There's no way you're going to close people with that mentality. You have to go in there like, hey, I'm having fun. I'm going to talk to this person and I'm going to see what works for them. Each person is an individual, and what closing techniques work precisely well on somebody else aren't going to work on the next person. So there are no magic bullets. What there is a magic attitude, a magic personality, a magic mentality, and a magic experience. Your experience is going to guide you in the right direction if you get that experience. And the number one reason people are bad at closing is because they do not demonstrate enough. They don't get on the phones enough. They don't get in front of people enough. They don't conduct sales demonstrations enough. They just don't work enough. That will be the number one downfall of anybody trying to make it in sales. You have to get out there and work. Practice makes perfect. And in this business where you're doing something akin to verbal gymnastics, practice is really the number one most important thing. So anyhow, that's going to conclude this video. I just wanted to do this as a quick heads up to all the people that hit me up all the time wanting, different techniques to be given to them that are going to make sales just happen. It's not true. Take my word for it. Believe me, I've been through this a long, long time, my entire life. You want to be a good salesperson, practice, train, demonstrate. Get out there, do the best you can. If you like this vid, sub to our channel, hit the like button below to be notified when we drop the next vid. Talk to you in the next one.